After 4,000 miles of ocean sailing, we are close to our goal of French Guiana in South America and the completion of our South Atlantic crossing. But to get there we still have to face the doldrums, an area of light winds and thunderstorms which has a history of driving sailors mad.
We are Matt and Amy. We have spent the last 6 years sailing our 37-foot sailboat Florence around the world. In that time we have crossed 3 oceans. Over 36,000 miles have passed under our keel, and we are now closing in on our goal, to complete our circumnavigation.
Before us lies the Atlantic Ocean, which we will now cross twice in order to reach the shores of England once more.
A couple of passengers on the solar panels, a couple of terns seem to have landed. We quite often get boobies and lots of other birds try to land on the solar panels to have a rest overnight, but these two are fighting each other and squawking a lot, which is keeping us awake. But even though they're also going to poop all over the solar panels, I feel a bit bad turfing them off into the night, so we're kind of letting them stay there, and I'll have to clean the solar panels in the morning. Getting really hot down below now. We're sailing along on the equator and the wind is easing. I've just been checking the latest weather files, downloaded them via the sat phone, and we're now just over a couple of days away from arriving, and we need to be a little bit careful about arriving here because we need high enough tide to get over the bar and get up the river. So it looks like our current ETA is to arrive about 5 o'clock in the evening. We've got 350 miles to go, but that's also the time of low tide, and also we don't really want to go up the river or into an unknown anchorage in the dark. So I think what we're going to do is go and anchor off some small islands just off the river entrance, but our ETA there is 5 o'clock in the evening, and I'd prefer to have a little bit more daylight in order to see what we're doing when we're anchoring. So although we're going at a reasonable speed with the current at the moment, we're doing 7.5 knots, we can go quite a bit quicker if we put the spinnaker up. So we're going to go and put the spinnaker up, go a little bit faster, and try and buy ourselves a little bit of extra time to anchor off those islands in a couple of days' time.
We've had an awesome day sailing today. We've been sailing along with the spinnaker up all day, doing about 8 or 9 knots, and it's just been flat calm, like absolutely stunning sailing. We've actually been sailing past a major milestone today, the Amazon River Basin, although you really wouldn't be able to tell just by looking at the water around us. We're so far offshore because you're advised to stay at least 150 miles offshore due to the debris that can get washed down the river. and that's obviously a danger in terms of something for us to hit. So the water itself is the same beautiful blue colour that it has been since we set off. Really doesn't feel like we've been sailing past the Amazon basin.
The forecast is for the breeze to ease off from here until we reach port in French Guiana. So now that we've got the spinnaker up, I think we're actually going to keep this up all through the night and probably all of tomorrow as well. To celebrate a glorious day sailing, we have fresh fish and chips for dinner with that tuna we caught yesterday.
We're still going past Brazil at the moment, and today we started to see a few fishing boats, even though we're 70 odd miles out to sea. And now that it's dark, it's really difficult to tell what direction those fishing boats are going to try and avoid them. The ones we've seen, or the ones I've just seen just now, are really well lit up, but they're so bright that you can't tell which direction they're going or how fast they're going. They don't appear on AIS, so it's a little bit nerve-wracking trying to dodge through them. Yeah, that fishing boat's going a bit closer now. He's side on to us so I can see his starboard running light, so he is going to pass behind us. We're actually running downwind at the moment with the spinnaker up. The wind kind of deserted us at the end of the day today, and we've gone from thinking we're going to get there in plenty of time to being, okay, we need to go a little bit faster in order to try and get there before dark tomorrow to make this our last night at sea. I'd rather not have another night dodging fishing boats, to be honest. It's probably my least favourite activity of sailing around the world, dodging fishing boats.
Well, this is a bit different to all of the sailing we've done on this passage so far. Last night we ran out of wind. We were thinking at one time, because we were going so fast, that we'd actually be there by now, but actually even the river entrance that we're going to go up is 35 miles away still. So at this pace sailing we wouldn't get there today. We've just come up to the doldrums, and so on the horizon we've got some kind of squally clouds. There were some thunderclouds last night, a few flashes of lightning, nothing near us, but that means we get very little wind. Luckily we've still got some current with us, about a knot of current, so it's helping us. We're kind of making about 3 knots.
So far this passage has been a lot easier than I expected. I was expecting really squally weather as we approached French Guiana and got closer to the doldrums, but so far we seem to have avoided that. We've now crossed the border from Brazil into French Guiana and fully crossed the Amazon basin, but the water now that we've come closer to the shore, is much more like what I was expecting when we were crossing the Amazon basin. It's gone really green and the clarity has dropped completely. Now that the water's shallower, we're much more likely to encounter local fishing boats, and the kind of size that are not on AIS and are much harder to spot, and there's no guarantee that they'll necessarily be lit at night. Even up to 100 metres, in places like this you can often find them anchored out. Oh, they're so close! Hello. Oh, gorgeous. That was looking at me.
Although it's been really light winds, we actually had a little bit more wind come in since we started drifting this morning. We're actually able to sail at 4 knots. But the only way I'm able to keep the boat going is to hand trim the spinnaker like this, because it's so shifty and the breeze is up and down, shifting quite a lot in direction. So I can just about keep us going like this, and then hopefully we won't have to use as much time under engine, won't have to use as much diesel to get to the islands where we're going to anchor tonight. I wouldn't normally do this on a big ocean passage, but because we know we're going to be able to sleep at anchor tonight, I don't need to catch up on my sleep during the day, so I can sit here and trim, which is actually what I enjoy doing.
It's 5 o'clock in the evening, we have 3 miles left to sail, and it gets dark about 6:30, so we will get into the anchorage in plenty of time. We've been able to sail all afternoon, which has been fantastic. We really weren't expecting to be able to do that. So we're both feeling really good, and also really good to be arriving in French Guiana. This is the completion of our South Atlantic crossing from South Africa to South America. The islands look beautiful, covered in palm trees, and they've got a really interesting history as well. So I'm looking forward to being able to explore them once we've been able to go up the river and check into the country.
It's been 4,400 miles since we left Walvis Bay.
4,000, how many?
4,400 miles since we left Walvis Bay in Namibia.
And we've still got the spare diesel can that we filled up on deck. We haven't had to use that, which
We've done
really good.
Just over 3 hours of motoring, which includes getting onto the anchorage, or into and out of anchorages and onto and off of moorings on the little islands on the way.
Yeah.
So that's not bad, really.
Not bad at all. The South Atlantic has a reputation for being just calm, relatively easy sailing, and it's definitely been our easiest crossing ever, I would say.
Oh, completely. Easiest crossing out of the whole circumnavigation. And
Yeah.
it's supposed to be the easiest one.
Yeah.
Most straightforward. We've hardly had any squalls.
No, I think maybe a couple on the way to St Helena.
Yeah, at the
But
start.
nothing major, which is really nice. Really nice.
Oh, and the temperature has changed so much since we left. Remember, we left Walvis Bay and we were in full foulies, all the thermals, socks, boots, woolly hats with a hot water bottle shoved up our jumpers just to try and stay warm on the night watches. And now, I mean, I'm stinking hot, sweating in a t-shirt, but been doing night watches in just a pair of shorts and a life jacket, to be honest.
Yeah, it was freezing at night when we left. We were really struggling to keep warm. And now we're struggling to cool down.
Yeah.
Got some arrival beer in the fridge, and I think we're going to get the best night's sleep than we've had in a long time.
So now the island is just 2 miles in front of us underneath the spinnaker, so I think it's actually time to take this spinnaker down so that we don't run into land, because we really don't want to do that after sailing 4,400 miles across an ocean. Cheers! Anchors down, we're in French Guiana. South Atlantic done. Oh, we're in a beautiful island surrounded by palm trees, the sound of the jungle. Unfortunately, we're not allowed ashore yet because tomorrow we need to go across to the mainland where the customs and immigration are, but there's no way we're going to make it up there before dark tonight, so we just stopped here because it was on the way, so we can have a good night's sleep, and then tomorrow we'll go and explore up a river.
We don't get jet lag on Florence, obviously, because we travel so slowly that we can just gradually change our time as we're crossing an ocean, just to kind of keep more in sync with the sunrise and sunset. But despite that, we still get very out of sync after an ocean passage. So I've been wide awake since before 5 this morning, ready for my 5 a.m. sunrise watch, and Matt is, I think, silently cursing me down below because he's still flat out exhausted, really, and will be for the next 3 hours. So it takes us a little while to kind of get back in sync together after an ocean passage, because we've just spent so long living totally kind of independent lives with our alternate watches as we're crossing an ocean.
So we're just leaving the islands where we anchored after completing our Atlantic crossing behind us, and we're about to sail up a river into French Guiana itself so that we can go and check in. We weren't allowed ashore on the islands until we checked in, but we arrived on Saturday. Today's Sunday. They don't open for check-in until Monday, but we need to be there in the morning, so we're just taking the tide up the river and we'll anchor close to the customs dock, ready to check in tomorrow. But it's absolutely beautiful day, blue skies, completely flat water, and about 7 or 8 knots of wind, perfect just to sail up this river on a reach. So it's beautiful, and I am so happy to be back in this kind of cruising ground again. It's amazing. Just about to navigate our way up this channel. It's really shallow all along this coast of South America, and so you've got to be careful with the channel markers. Luckily here in French Guiana, I believe the channel markers are in the right place because the bottom shifts around with the current and the channel actually moves. So we're just coming up to a fairway buoy, and that is completely different position to where the fairway buoy is on the chart. So I'm just going to be very careful to follow the channel markers. We're also coming in on a rising tide, so if we do run aground, hopefully it'll be soft mud and hopefully we'll then get lifted off by the tide.
This is the first time that we've had to even consider the tides in our passage planning since we were leaving Australia and the river bars of Australia behind, which it's too early in the morning for me to calculate how many years ago that was. It's also Ayala B here, which is the opposite way of marking a route into a channel than the UK, so we've got to make sure that we've got the port and starboard markers on the right side of the boat as we're going in.
Just past a dredger in the channel. It's quite narrow, the channel here, and it's a little bit more shallow than we were expecting. We're at pretty much, well, just before high tide, half an hour to high tide, and we've only got 2.5 meters of depth, so it's about a metre of tidal range, something like that. So maybe we do need high tide to get in and out of here.
We are coming in on a high tide, but it's a neap high. So on a spring tide, when there's more range of movement with the water, then we'd possibly have another half a metre under the keel than we do at the moment. Whereas now we've got 30 centimetres.
20 centimetres now.
Yeah, this isn't looking good. We just dropped the mainsail and that's just literally just started the engine because it got really shallow. But the trouble is we're so close to the high tide. If the tide turns and we haven't been able to get all of the way in and past the shallows, we would obviously run aground and the tide would be dropping, which would not be good. So we're just going to try and speed up and get past all of the shallows quickly, but it's hard to say where those shallows are because obviously the chart isn't that accurate.
Well, that was a bit of drama that we weren't expecting. We're actually now coming into the river itself. We've been going over the kind of mud flats outside the river. We're now at the point that in the pilot guide said, be careful, it's a little bit shallower than it is on the charts. But actually here, it is deeper than they said on the charts. We should have been able to get all the way up this channel at low water, because we should have had at least a metre, according to the pilot book and the chart, plus the tidal range, which was neap, so plus 1.5. We should have, even at low water, had 2.5 metres water. We've come in at high tide, and we were literally, I think, according to the depth gauge, we were just kissing the bottom as we came over a very shallow point at high tide, which was miles further out to sea, where it's supposed to be fine.
In hindsight, we suspect that the dredger was kicking up a lot of soft silt, which was flowing in with the tide and causing our echo sounder to give shallower readings than really existed. When we sailed out of the channel later with no dredger present, we found it to be deeper.
We were reminded why this is called a rainforest. We anchored off the customs dock, ready to check in the next day, and put up our rain catcher to replenish our drinking water.
So we're up the river in French Guiana, and obviously we're in the Amazon jungle pretty much, so there's going to be a bunch of mosquitoes around come sundown, so just getting all our mosquito covers out for the hatches. And this one, the mesh was broken, but luckily we had some material that I think Amy's mum gave us before we left England 6 years ago, and so we can actually make a new net to go in the middle of the hatch piece. So hopefully we don't catch malaria or dengue fever.
Or chikungunya
or any of the other lovely things that mosquitoes bring.
Next time, having completed our South Atlantic Ocean crossing, it's time to inspect Florence for damage and make repairs before exploring French Guiana. We sail back out to explore the beautiful Ile de Salut, find out about their dark past, and watch as a rocket powerful enough to launch Florence into orbit lifts off.
Don't forget to subscribe to catch the next episode. We release a video every 2 weeks.
If you'd like to find out more about behind the scenes on Florence, track our progress across the oceans in real time, find out where we are right now, or ask us pretty much anything, then please head over to our Patreon site and join the crew. We would like to thank everyone who supports us to make these videos possible, and a special thank you to our star patrons.